Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. You'd think 70 acres of Texas ranch land would guarantee peace, but when a pushy HOA queen dares to claim a war vet's private road as community property, things escalate fast into sabotage, lawsuits, and one legendary trench that drew a line no one would dare cross. You'd think that 70 acres of ranch land in central Texas would buy you peace and quiet. After 20 years in the Marines and one hell of a divorce, all I wanted was to be left alone, with my dog Max, my tractor Bertha, and the sound of wind moving through mesquite trees. I bought the land cash, surveyed it myself twice, put up every post and fence board with my own damn hands. There's one dirt road, one leading to my house. I carved it out from nothing. And that road, it's mine. Every grain of dust, every rock, every rut, I own it. Legally, provably. At first, life was exactly what I wanted. No neighbors, no noise, just me and the open land. A place where I could let Max run free and enjoy a beer on the porch without anyone whining about HOA paint codes or grass height ordinances. But then came Cactus Ridge Estates. A high-end pastel-colored development sprouted like a fungus half a mile from my northern fence. Cookie-cutter houses, identical mailboxes, and of course the inevitable HOA, led by someone who looked like she stepped straight out of a reality show about over-involved suburban moms, Karen Greenwell. It started small. One day, a silver Lexus crept down my private road. I assumed someone was lost. The next day, it was a Range Rover, then a Tesla. Within a week, my road looked like a morning commute in Austin. I posted signs, private road, no through traffic. They vanished overnight. I put up a chain gate. Someone cut it clean in half and tossed it in the creek. Then came the knock. One Tuesday morning, Karen herself rolled up in a pristine white Escalade, uninvited, and parked in front of my workshop like she was visiting a public park. She stepped out in heels and oversized sunglasses, holding what looked like a clipboard and a cappuccino. "Mr. Hampton," she began with the syrupy tone of someone pretending to be reasonable, "we need to talk about your road. It's become a vital access route for our community." I stared at her, deadpan. "Lady, this ain't a community road. It's mine." She smiled like I was a child. "It's been used regularly. That makes it practically public. People rely on it now." I laughed. Couldn't help it. "Well, I rely on that creek behind the barn for fishing, but that doesn't make it yours." That was the first time she called it a moral right of access. And that's when I knew this wasn't going to be one of those neighborly misunderstandings that blows over. This was war. The week after Karen's little visit, it was like someone had fired the starter pistol on the HOA Grand Prix. My road went from the occasional trespasser to a full-on commuter freeway. SUVs, minivans, delivery trucks, you name it, started rolling across my land like it was a designated detour. Some even honked as they drove by, like they were entitled to be there. I'd sit on my porch with Max, sipping coffee, watching them bounce down the gravel with zero shame. I put up more signs, big ones this time, reflective bold red letters. Private road, no public access. I even added no HO traffic just to make it crystal clear. Didn't matter. One morning, I found all the signs bent backwards or knocked over entirely. Someone had taken a Sharpie to one and scrawled, "Roads are for everyone." Across the bottom, I checked the camera I'd mounted on an old mesquite tree. There she was, Karen, wearing yoga pants and a sun hat, prying up my sign with a crowbar like she was digging up garden weeds. She posed next to it for a photo. A photo. Like this was a victory. Then came the letters. 3 of them in 1 week, each more absurd than the last, all on official-looking HOA letterhead. The first informed me that my road had been used long enough to qualify for community easement consideration. The second stated I was expected to maintain the road to HOA safety standards due to ongoing use by residents. The third, my personal favorite, actually fined me $100 for obstructing a community travel corridor when I dumped a fresh load of gravel on a pothole. I laughed. At first, but then I noticed the trail of destruction, tire ruts deep enough to break an ankle, dust clouds choking out my vegetable garden. My mailbox, the heavy-duty one I welded to a steel pipe, smashed in like someone had played mailbox baseball with a Louisville Slugger, and that's when I realized this wasn't just trespassing, it was sabotage. Then came Pete. Poor bastard. HOA's self-proclaimed compliance officer. The man had a laminated name badge and the enthusiasm of a mall cop on his first day. He rolled up in a bright yellow golf cart with flashing lights on top like he was part of a rural SWAT team. "I'm here to document violations," he said as he stepped out, holding an iPad and some kind of measuring wheel. "Violations of what?" I asked, arms crossed. "Section 4.1 of the HOA Charter," he said. "All shared access roads must remain unobstructed and visually consistent with neighborhood standards. Your road's aesthetic is problematic." I stared at him. "Pete, this isn't your neighborhood. This is my ranch. This isn't even within your HOA's mapped boundaries." He blinked. "Well, Karen said you were under informal jurisdiction due to proximity." "Proximity," I repeated. "My nearest neighbor is a coyote." I told Pete to leave. He said he'd be reporting this. I said good. Report it to someone who gives a damn. A few days later, I caught a landscaping crew unloading gravel bags on my property. Not for me, from me. They were moving rock from my drive onto another street to beautify the neighborhood path. They had a map printed by the HOA showing my road as a communal access trail. That map had a new label, Silver Spur Parkway. You ever see red so hard your ears ring? I confronted the crew. They apologized, said they were just following orders. I demanded the name. They hesitated. Then one said, "Karen." She said it was approved. I don't remember the rest of that conversation because my blood pressure hit boil, and all I saw was white. I called my attorney. We needed to lock this down legally, not next month. Now, meanwhile, Karen and her HOA started escalating in ways I couldn't have made up. They set up a digital petition titled, "Recognize Silver Spur Parkway as Essential Community Infrastructure." Someone stuck flyers in my mailbox saying I was endangering school children by forcing families onto the main road. One even had a photoshopped image of a toddler standing on my driveway crying, like some kind of propaganda poster. The final straw came on a Sunday morning. I was in my workshop tuning Bertha, the tractor, when I heard music outside. Not the usual birds or wind, loudspeaker music. I stepped out and saw it, a full-on HOA fun run happening down my road. People jogging, wearing matching t-shirts that read, "Run for our right-of-way." Kids handing out water bottles. Pete on the golf cart with a megaphone. "Hydration station ahead. Silver Spur strong." That was it. I didn't care if they called it a right, a tradition, or a divine highway granted by God himself. I was done. I wasn't going to let this continue. It was time for some Texas-style problem solving, the kind that involves heavy machinery, sweat, and a trench deep enough to send a message. By the time Monday morning rolled around, I was done being polite, done waiting for attorneys to exchange letters, done watching HOA propaganda flood my mailbox. These people didn't understand boundaries the normal way, so I decided to draw one they couldn't ignore, literally. I called my buddy Bill, who owned a construction outfit and a very satisfying piece of equipment, a bright orange case backhoe with oversized tires and a hydraulic arm that could dig through Texas clay like it was soft butter. He owed me a favor from the time I helped him pull his F-350 out of a dry creek bed at 2 a.m. after misjudging a shortcut, as he put it. I cashed that favor in fast. "Trench?" he asked, chewing on a breakfast taco. "How deep?" "Deep enough to make a soccer mom think twice," I replied. By noon, the engine was rumbling and dirt was flying, right at the choke point of the road, just past the cattle gate, and before the land dipped into a ravine, we dug a 6-foot-wide, 5-foot-deep trench that spanned the entire width of the road. We lined it with rebar stakes on either side, not for defense, but for emphasis. I also installed motion-activated floodlights and 2 security cameras aimed dead center. I wasn't trying to hide this. Hell, I wanted it on the evening news. For good measure, I put up new signage on both ends. Private property. Danger. Open trench. Trespassers assume all risk. I even threw in a QR code that linked to a PDF of my property deed. I thought that'd be enough. It wasn't. The very next morning, I was sipping my coffee on the porch when I heard tires crunching gravel. I looked up to see a familiar white Escalade turning onto my road. Karen. Of course it was Karen. Now, any rational person would stop when they see floodlights flick on, or when the trench becomes visible, or when their front tires lift slightly off the ground as they bounce into a death pit. But Karen hit the gas like she was auditioning for Fast and Furious. HOA drift. What followed was cinematic. The SUV dropped nose first into the trench with a thunderous whomp, sending a geyser of mud, dust, and broken pride into the air. The front bumper sheared off. The airbags deployed. The engine sputtered like a drowning lawnmower. For 3 glorious seconds, there was complete silence. Then I heard it. "Are you kidding me?" Karen clawed her way out of the driver's seat like an indignant raccoon escaping a tipped-over trash can. She was wearing some kind of HOA-branded windbreaker, beige heels, in a trench, mind you, and holding her phone in full TikTok Karen mode. You did this. This is entrapment. You'll be hearing from our lawyers." I didn't even get up. I just held up my coffee and said, "You were warned," about 37 times. She tried to march toward me, but her heel snapped off and she tumbled backwards onto the dirt with a squawk. Max barked. Whether in laughter or alarm, I'm still not sure. The police arrived within 20 minutes. I'd already prepped them weeks ago with documentation. Officer Jensen, a patient man with the expression of someone permanently unimpressed, stepped out of his cruiser, took one look at the scene, and let out a long sigh. "Let me guess," he said. "HOA again?" I nodded. He walked over to Karen, who was now standing beside her half-submerged Escalade, mascara streaking down one cheek. "Ma'am, this is private land. You've been warned multiple times, and this trench is entirely legal under Texas law. You were trespassing." "I was following a route," she shrieked. "A community route." Jensen calmly pulled out a folder. "We've reviewed the surveys. This isn't a community anything. This is Jake Hampton's dirt, and you drove right into it." She turned to me. "You think you're clever? This isn't over." I smiled and pointed at the security camera. "Smile for the insurance claim." The trench did more than break Karen's front axle. It broke the illusion of control she and the HOA thought they had. By Wednesday, my inbox was flooded with emails from news outlets, neighbors, and even total strangers who'd seen a drone video of her Escalade being winched out of the mud like a stranded whale. Someone added dramatic music and uploaded it to YouTube. "Trench Justice, the HOA strikes out." Over 200,000 views by lunch. I may or may not have watched it 10 times, but this wasn't just petty satisfaction. The fallout hit fast and ugly. First came the official HOA letter, stamped, notarized, and soaked in passive aggression. They accused me of creating a public hazard, endangering community members, and, my personal favorite, aggravated trench behavior. That last one made my lawyer laugh so hard he nearly fell out of his chair. Karen doubled down. She submitted a formal complaint to the county commissioner's office, complete with color photos of her in the trench, mud-covered, looking like she'd survived a natural disaster. The caption she included, "Endangered by rogue landowners' anti-community aggression." A week later, I came home from town to find a group of HOA board members, clipboards in hand, standing on the edge of my trench, pointing and arguing. One guy in a salmon-colored polo shirt yelled, "We need to pave this. Force an easement vote." Another muttered something about declaring eminent domain. They weren't just delusional, they were organized. That's when I called my attorney, Ray, and said 5 words I'd been saving for months. "Time to go nuclear, buddy." We filed an injunction within 48 hours, backed by decades of deed history, tax records, topographic maps, and signed affidavits from old ranchers who'd known this land since Eisenhower was president. Ray even got a local historian to write a notarized letter titled, "This has never been a damn public road." I turned my property into a legal fortress. Meanwhile, HOA went full scorched earth. Karen posted an open letter on the neighborhood Facebook group accusing me of waging psychological warfare against peaceful families. She compared my trench to a moat from medieval times, complete with feudal landowner energy. She wasn't wrong. And honestly, that quote slapped. I put it on a t-shirt. The HOA hosted a community safety meeting at the local church hall and invited concerned citizens to speak out against my campaign of obstruction. I went too, because why not? I brought Ray, my paperwork, and a flash drive with every trespassing incident logged and time-stamped. Karen stood at the podium like a general rallying troops. This is about access, about unity, our right to travel. When it was my turn, I calmly walked up, plugged in my USB, and played a highlight reel. SUVs blazing down my driveway, teens on dirt bikes, Karen ripping up my private road signs like she was in a music video. One clip even caught her yelling, "He can't stop us all," like she was storming the beaches of Normandy. Silence. Then came scattered laughs. Someone coughed. Pete, the HOA's compliance officer, slid down in his chair like he wished the floor would swallow him whole. I looked out over the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not anti-community. I just believe in boundaries, literal ones, that I own. With a deed, the moderator cleared his throat and said, "Well, that settles a lot." The meeting ended early. Karen left in a huff, muttering something about lawyer traps and YouTube lies, but something shifted after that. I started getting apologies from people I hadn't spoken to in months. A woman named Jessica from Cactus Ridge brought me homemade bread. One guy even offered to help me refill the trench with concrete if things got worse. HOA's campaign was unraveling fast, but they weren't done yet. They were about to try something so spectacularly stupid, so legally suicidal, that it would end this saga once and for all. I figured the trench, the cops, the community meeting, something would finally hammer the message home. But as it turns out, the HOA wasn't just arrogant, they were also deeply, spectacularly stupid. About 2 weeks after the Escalade incident, I woke up to the sound of machinery. Not my tractor, not Bill's backhoe, something else. I threw on boots, grabbed my shotgun, unloaded but visually persuasive, and walked out the front door to see a crew of landscapers with dump trucks, gravel pallets, and a full-on concrete mixer on my property. One of them waved cheerfully. "Morning, we're here to grade and pave Silver Spur Parkway." I blinked. "You're here to what?" "Yeah, the HOA finally approved the budget. You'll love the upgrade. Full blacktop, curb edging, drainage." Karen said this was the last stretch to make it official. I didn't scream. I didn't threaten. I just held up a hand and said, "Stay right there." I called the sheriff. Then I called Ray. Within the hour, we had 2 deputies, my lawyer, a real estate surveyor, and the HOA's lawyer, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, standing in the middle of my ranch while I pointed to survey markers in the dirt like a man giving a TED Talk titled, "How to Get Sued into the Stone Age." "This," I said, tapping a stake with a bright pink flag, "is the property line. Everything this crew is standing on. Mine. Every tire track. Trespassing. Every shovel of gravel. Unauthorized development." The HOA lawyer muttered, "Jesus Christ, Karen." Karen, standing to the side in another pastel tracksuit and mirrored sunglasses, tried to salvage the moment. "It's a misunderstanding," she insisted. "We acted under assumed easement rights. We were told—" "You were told nothing," Ray snapped. "You made it up. You altered maps. You attempted to pave over private property. And now you've exposed your entire board to litigation." Karen opened her mouth to protest but immediately closed it when one of the deputies asked, "Ma'am, did you instruct this crew to begin work here?" She hesitated. "Well, Ma'am," the deputy interrupted, "just answer the question." "Yes," she admitted. That was enough. The crew packed up fast. Karen, for once, didn't argue, but that wasn't the end of it. We filed a civil lawsuit within 72 hours. Trespassing, property damage, unauthorized construction, harassment, and attempted fraud. Ray made sure it was airtight. We requested $150,000 in damages. Real damages this time, not just symbolic. Between the trench incident, the destroyed signage, the soil grading, and the endless harassment, we had receipts for everything. The court date arrived quicker than expected. The courtroom was packed. HOA members came to spectate. Karen showed up with a new lawyer and a noticeably smaller sense of superiority. Ray presented our case like a seasoned gunslinger. Video evidence, emails, notarized complaints from neighbors, property maps, time-stamped footage of Karen directing construction workers with a latte in hand. It was a buffet of HOA incompetence. At one point, the judge actually rubbed her temples and muttered, "Why are we here?" Karen's team tried everything, claimed public interest, community precedent, even emotional distress from the trench video going viral. But it all fell apart under cross-examination. They couldn't prove any legal right to access my road. They couldn't justify altering HOA maps. And they sure as hell couldn't explain the concrete trucks on my land. The verdict? $150,000 in damages, full legal fees reimbursed, permanent injunction against the HOA from entering or altering my land. But the cherry on top? The judge ordered that Karen personally issue a written apology to be read aloud at the next HOA meeting and published in the monthly newsletter. Ray and I went out for steaks that night, medium rare, whiskey on the side. I told him it was the best damn trench I'd ever dug. There's a special kind of silence that settles in after a storm. When the shouting stops, the dust settles, and everyone realizes exactly how stupid they were. That silence blanketed Cactus Ridge Estates the week after the verdict. No more SUVs buzzing down my road. No more flyers in my mailbox. No more late-night HOA meetings plotting community reclamation strategies. Karen. She disappeared from public view for a while. Rumor had it she skipped town for a wellness retreat in Arizona. The board quietly removed her as HOA president. They didn't announce it. She just vanished from the website, and her name stopped appearing on official letters. Pete, the former compliance officer, now worked at the local hardware store. When I saw him, he wouldn't make eye contact, but he did slip a sorry about everything note into my receipt. What struck me most was how fast the neighborhood flipped. The same people who had once signed petitions and blocked me in at the grocery store were now sending apology emails, dropping off pies, and waving nervously from across fences like I was a war hero coming home. Jessica, the bread lady from earlier, brought me a peach cobbler and offered to help repaint my mailbox. A couple of dads from the HOA's Green Committee asked if I needed volunteers to regrade the trench area, not as an easement, but as a goodwill gesture. One guy, Brad, actually said, "You taught us where the line is." Literally. The trench? I filled part of it in, but left the middle section as a decorative pond with cattails and a little wooden sign. Karen's Crossing, private access only. It became sort of a legend. Tourists stopped by to take pictures. A local brewery even named a beer after it, Right of Way Red. I got a six-pack and the first glass on the house. Meanwhile, Ray and I filed one last motion to ensure that no future HOA leadership could attempt any easement claims or historic use loopholes. The court granted a permanent easement exclusion clause, notarized and attached to my property records. That road, that land, uncontestable. And I started sleeping better. Max, too. The nights were quieter. The mailbox survived unbothered. No more trespassers, no more spotlights, no more HOA grandstanding. It was just me, the stars, and the sound of wind through the trees. Exactly like I wanted from the beginning. I didn't go looking for revenge. I just wanted peace. But if peace required a trench, a court case, and the public humiliation of a woman with a god complex and a clipboard, then so be it. Sometimes you've got to dig deep to draw a line that people finally respect. It's funny how something as simple as a trench, just a scar of earth carved by steel and resolve, can come to represent so much more than property lines. A year has passed since the whole HOA debacle, and life on the ranch has finally returned to what it was meant to be: quiet, wide open, mine. The trench itself? It's no longer a gaping reminder of frustration. I turned it into a pond, shaped naturally, with stone borders and a wooden footbridge arching across one end. Max likes to sit there in the mornings, nose in the wind, watching dragonflies skim the surface. I even planted some wildflowers along the edges. It's peaceful, serene. A far cry from the day Karen's Escalade dove into it like a rhinoceros on roller skates. But the memory of that day hasn't gone anywhere. And to be honest, I don't want it to. It's become a kind of local legend. The trench, the lawsuit, the fall of Karen. Around here, you'd think it was folklore. People who once avoided me now stop by to say hello. One guy brought his kids to see the famous pond. Another snapped a picture and asked if I ever thought of putting up a historical marker. I didn't, but I did put up a handmade wooden sign. Karen's Crossing, watch your step. It's not about pettiness. It's about perspective and a sense of humor. Every August, I host what the neighbors have affectionately named Boundary Day. The first time, it was just me, a few folks from down the road, some brisket on the smoker, and a cooler full of beer. But word spread. Now it's a full-blown backyard gathering. Families bring folding chairs, kids run around with homemade no trespassing flags, and someone always brings a cake shaped like a sunken SUV. Last year, the frosting even had little mud streaks made of crushed Oreos. We laugh a lot, not just at Karen, but at ourselves, at how absurd it all was, how it spiraled, how easy it is to lose sight of common sense when people wrap themselves in bureaucracy and forget about basic decency. At last year's Boundary Day, one of the new HOA board members came by. nervously at first. He introduced himself as Mark, said he wasn't here to argue or inspect anything, just to meet the guy behind the story and maybe share a beer. I poured him one and handed him a plate of ribs. We talked for a while about land, responsibility, how good fences don't just make good neighbors, they keep HOA committees where they belong. That conversation stuck with me. It reminded me that not everyone in a group is the group. Karen may have led the charge, but others just got swept up in it. Maybe afraid to push back. Maybe just going along with the loudest voice. Karen herself? I haven't seen her since the lawsuit. I heard she moved to a lakeside condo 2 counties over, and ironically, she's now just a renter. No HOA, no board to run, no private road to claim. Poetic. Me? I've got my land, my peace, my dog, and one hell of a story that somehow turned a muddy mess into a symbol of standing up for yourself when no one else will. And every time I sit by that pond with a fresh cup of coffee, I think about all the ways it could have gone wrong, and how a little trench and a lot of grit kept it from happening. The world's got plenty of Karens, but it's also got trenches. And sometimes, if you dig the right one, you don't just protect your property. You carve out the line that tells the world, this is mine, and I will defend it. That, my friend, is worth a beer. And maybe a slice of SUV cake, too.